He thought he married a quiet, ordinary woman. He cheated on her, belittled her, and planned to leave her once he figured out the finances. There was just one problem. The finances were hers. The house was hers. The empire was hers. And the night he publicly threw her aside for another woman, she made sure the whole city learned exactly who he had betrayed.
Eels. Draped in crimson silk, Lena Morrison enters the gale like a calculated storm. She has discarded the muted palette Richard once demanded, opting for a dress that pans the room. For 5 years, she played the role of the dutiful, invisible wife, her heartbeat muffled by expectations. But tonight that facade crumbles. High upon their gilded platform, the Bennett family sits with the unearned confidence of monarchs, unaware that their kingdom is built on shifting sand. Heels. Lena's heels strike the marble like a metronome, counting down to an inevitable collapse. She finds Richard, his face twisted in familiar disdain. He reclines with an arm draped over a chair, her chair occupied by Candace Wright. With gold in her hair and a smile that screams usurpation, Candace wears a fortune on her back while Richard treats his legal wife like an uninvited ghost. It is a masterclass in domestic betrayal, performed for the entire high society. Heels. Candace shares intimate laughter with Richard's father as if she already carries the family name. When Lena approaches, Richard's gaze is devoid of recognition, treating the woman who built his world like a common trespasser. He questions her presence with a cold, skin-crawling condescension. Lena stands firm, asserting her title as his wife, but Patricia simply clinks her glass, eyeing her daughter-in-law as if she were a stained relic from a past they have already buried. Feels. Patricia icily remarks that the family table has reached its capacity, suggesting Lena's seat among the common guests. It is a public stripping of status. When Lena gestures to her rightful place, Richard lets out a laugh that echoes through the sudden silence of the ballroom. He stands, whispering for her to retreat to the shadows before she causes a scene, claiming Candace is a mere family friend. We all know that phrase is the ultimate polite fiction. Feels. In this world, a family friend is often just a euphemism for the woman who smells of illicit perfume and sends midnight messages. Lena stands shattered, reflecting on 5 years of shrinking herself to fit Richard's narrow ego. Now, he raises his voice, ensuring the surrounding tables witness his cruelty. He tells her she hasn't earned a seat at the table, treating the very architect of his success like a servant who has forgotten her place. Feels. Richard's lecture on meritocracy is the ultimate irony. His father remains silent while Patricia meticulously checks her manicure, and Candace wears the smirk of a victor. Lena can feel the weight of every gaze in the ballroom. The silence is a heavy, suffocating shroud. She sees the board members and the executives watching this public execution, none of them realizing that every person under this roof is actually on her payroll. Feels. The catering staff and security guards stand frozen, paralyzed by the truth they are legally forbidden to speak. Lena once thought her anonymity was a shield for her marriage, but it has become a cage. Richard raises his champagne glass, waving her away with the casual flick one might use on a bothersome insect. He tells her the back tables are perfectly suitable for her, eager to begin the program, unaware that he is introducing his own downfall. Feels. That single, dismissive wave of his hand is the final blow to a dying flame. Lena stands still for 3 agonizing seconds, etching the faces of her tormentors into her mind with surgical precision. She is fueling her resolve with their arrogance. Turning her back, she traverses the ballroom, her red dress shimmering like a trail of fire under the spotlights. It is a long journey to the back, but she is no longer retreating. She is ascending. Heels. The room is a sea of judgmental eyes and whispered speculation. Lena finds a seat at a secluded table, a vantage point in which she can observe the stage she personally commissioned months ago. As she smooths her silk skirt, a trembling waiter approaches, nearly uttering her true title before catching himself. The entire staff is holding its breath. Richard believes he has secured a petty victory, but he has simply walked into the lioness's den. Feels. In the shadows of the rear table, Lena shifts into her true persona. She navigates her phone, reading urgent updates from Grace, her actual chief of staff at Morrison Holdings. The security teams are briefed and the legal counsel is waiting for the signal. Her employees are vibrating with indignation on her behalf. Grace sends a final word of encouragement, and Lena replies with 2 words, proceed as planned. She looks at the architecture around her. This is her legacy. Heels. This tower is the heart of the billion-dollar empire Lena's father built, a crown jewel she inherited and expanded at 27. She became a corporate titan in the shadows, proving her worth behind a fortress of anonymity and legal teams. When she met Richard, she hid her vast wealth, craving a connection that wasn't transactional. She played the part of a modest woman with a simple trust fund, desperate to see if he would love her without the billions. Heels. She sought a companion, not a beneficiary, so she maintained the charade of his superiority. She allowed Richard to bask in the delusion that he was the powerful one, the sun around which her life revolved. He feasted on that lie for years while she slowly faded into his shadow. But as the quartet finishes their final movement and the house lights begin to dim, Lena sits in the back row, precisely where he exiled her, waiting for the reckoning. Heels. Richard leans back, exuding the false confidence of a man who thinks he has conquered the world. Patricia laughs at a private joke while Candace is preoccupied with her digital reflection. None of them bothered to study the evening's program or wonder why a Bennett function is held in the Morrison flagship tower. Their vanity has blinded them to the obvious snare. The master of ceremonies approaches the microphone, and the execution of their reputation officially begins. Heels. Jeffrey Santos takes the stage, a man who has served the Morrison family since Lena was a child. He begins a tribute to Thomas Morrison, the visionary who erected this corporate temple. Richard's brow furrows in confusion. He expected a night dedicated to the Bennett name, not a history lesson on the Morrison dynasty. The atmosphere in the room shifts as a collective realization begins to dawn on the crowd. Richard is starting to sense the ground giving way. Heels. Jeffrey speaks of the enigmatic woman who took her father's torch and turned it into a global conflagration. He describes a leader who has ruled unseen brilliance for 5 years. Patricia whispers frantically to a bewildered Richard, who can only shake his head in utter confusion. Then the hammer falls. Jeffrey prepares to introduce the sole owner and chief executive of Morrison Holdings. The true power in the room is about to be revealed to everyone. Heels. The spotlight slices through the darkness, finding its mark at the very back of the room. Lena stands, her red dress glowing like lava. As the name Lena Morrison rings out, the silence becomes a physical weight. At the head table, Richard's glass slips from his hand, shattering against the floor like a gunshot. He turns a ghostly shade of gray. Lena begins her walk toward the stage, each step a rhythmic pulse of reclaimed power and cold, calculated triumph. Heels. The ballroom transforms as the staff stands at military attention for their sovereign. The board members finally see the face of the brilliance they have followed blindly. Whispers of shock ripple through the elite guests as the pieces of the puzzle lock into place. Richard sits, frozen, his expression one of pure, unadulterated terror. The man who tried to keep his wife in the dark is now blinded by her light. He was never the king, just a tenant. Heels. At 27 years old, Lena Morrison felt as though she was drowning in the middle of a high-end gala. Her father had died only 3 months prior, leaving her a vast, cold empire she never desired. One moment they were sharing a meal, the next he was gone. Now she was the reluctant monarch of a corporate kingdom, paralyzed by the weight of her crown. The condolences felt like insults. She was surrounded by wealth and power, but to her, it was all just a gilded cemetery. Heels. The legacy felt like a crushing burden she couldn't escape. Suddenly, a man appeared, Richard Bennett, possessing the effortless charm of a cinema icon. He noted her desire to flee the room, and she felt a spark of genuine connection. She introduced herself only as Lena, withholding the Morrison name to survive the predatory nature of her circle. She was hiding her status from the start, and Richard had no idea he was speaking to the wealthiest individual in the building. Heels. The Morrison name was a bullseye she wasn't ready to wear. Richard was refreshingly blunt, a trait she found intriguing in a room full of sycophants. For the first time since the funeral, she found herself laughing. They looked out at a mundane parking lot, a stark contrast to the hollow opulence behind them. It was a moment of rare honesty amidst the theater of the elite. But then his gaze deepened, and the casual conversation took a turn. Heels. Richard's scrutiny felt like he was peeling back her layers, and Lena felt dangerously exposed. He remarked that these galas are nothing more than elaborate stage plays where everyone wears a mask to hide their true self. She questioned if he enjoyed the performance, and he admitted to a weary exhaustion. He spoke of wanting to escape the crushing weight of his own family expectations. Never realizing that he was a woman who had already perfected the art of the disguise. Feels. They remain statues in a sea of dancers. Lena admits her father just died. To the world, she is an icon of resilience, but inside, Richard gazes at her, truly looks at her, and whispers that real power is showing up when you are shattered. She scans his face. Amidst these predators and parasites, he radiates a rare warmth. It is a moment of pure gravity. For the first time in forever, her defenses crumble. She is falling. Feels. He invites her to flee this hollow gala for a humble cafe down the street. Her legal team would panic. He is a stranger, a risk, but the burden of her legacy is suffocating. She yearns for simplicity. They escape. No corporate strategy, no prying into her portfolio, just presence. He shares stories of cinema, literature, and domestic disasters. In this small corner of the world, the weight of her crown finally vanishes. Feels. That night, the armor falls away. She is not the chief executive. She is just a woman sharing coffee with a charming enigma. When he asks to see her again, she doesn't. Richard pursues her with old-fashioned sincerity and blooms. To him, she is a commoner, an ordinary girl in a vast city. He has no idea her home is a glass fortress in the most exclusive neighborhood. She is masterfully maintaining a dual existence. Feels. Their world shrinks to candlelit tables and quiet truths. Richard confesses his own struggle, a father who views venture capital as a betrayal of the family name. He feels like a performer trapped in a script not of his making. Lena recognizes the echo in her own heart. She is delivering the performance of a lifetime, playing the girl next door while directing a global empire. After 3 months, he confesses his love. The gravity deepens, but so does her deception. Feels. During a slow stroll through the park, he pauses to take her hands. He declares his love with a certainty that stills her breath. He believes she is the only soul who truly witnesses his essence beyond his bank account or pedigree. Guilt washes over her like a tide. She loves him deeply, yet he is blind to the architecture of her life. Can he truly love her while she conceals her diamond throne? She echoes his words, but the shadow of her secret grows long. Feels. He anchors her through the waves of mourning, yet her reality remains a vault. A year passes. She has become the invisible monarch of Morrisonhold, governing a kingdom without a public face. There is a seductive power in this anonymity. Then, at their sanctuary, the coffee shop, Richard kneels. Amidst the morning rush and the scent of roasted beans, he presents a ring. It is a modest, elegant circle that offers a future that chills her blood. She is going to be his wife. Feels. Marry me, he softly pleads. She accepts a woman seeking refuge from her own isolation, yet her truth remains a phantom. The ceremony is small, an intimate affair. Richard attributes it to her humble nature. Feels. But the reality is calculated. A grand gala would shatter her disguise as a commoner. She curates a guest list of the silent. Richard's parents arrive, masking their disdain. They believe their son is marrying beneath his station. Feels. They have no inkling she could purchase their entire legacy with a signature. Feels. During the reception, Patricia's eyes are sharp with suspicion. She questions the origin of this nameless bride. That night, Lena stands on the precipice of confession. She understands that a union built on shadows is fragile. Feels. But Richard is enamored with his role as the protector. He vows to be her provider and her fortress. You will never want for anything, he murmurs. He envisions himself as the patriarch, the financier, the master. Feels. He is oblivious to the fact that she commands the very air he breathes. Feels. So she retreats into silence. She craves the illusion of safety, a respite from the crushing weight of her responsibilities. Their first year is a choreographed dream. Richard is the model husband, introducing his trophy wife to his social orbit. Feels. She performs the role with grace, enchanting his peers. Yet while he occupies his office, she is the ghost in the mainframe. She orchestrates Morrison Holdings through encrypted channels and clandestine summits. Feels. She is ruling a global conglomerate from their sofa, while he imagines she is browsing boutiques. Feels. She governs her kingdom from the shadows, while he assumes she is occupied with social luncheons. The distillate has become her skin, a soft wife at dawn. A year two, the facade begins to crack. Richard secures a deal and parades like a conqueror. Over dinner, he boasts of manning $50 million. He believes he has finally ascended in his father's eyes. He feels like a titan, unaware he is merely a sapling in the shadow of a redwood. Feels. Lena offers polite applause, withholding the fact she closed a $2 billion merger that same morning. His accomplishment is a rounding error to her, but she protects his fragile pride. However, success curdles into control. He begins to critique her appearance and her wardrobe with a cold eye. He demands she dress with more modesty to suit his brand. He mocks her perceived aimlessness, suggesting she join a charity to find purpose. The irony is staggering. He tells her she should emulate the socialites in his mother's circle. The insult lingers. By the third year, Richard's curiosity about her life has evaporated. He is consumed by his own stresses and quarterly results. She has been relegated to a piece of scenery in his grand production. When she suggests they're becoming strangers, he dismisses her as hysterical. His fatigue is a shield against her needs. He remains oblivious that the floor beneath his feet is maintained by her secret hand. Richard perceived Lena as a fragile emotional liability. He had no concept that her silence was a burning toward a detonator. She was not prepared to incinerate their union quite yet, still mourning the hope of genuine love. A public divorce felt like a strategic defeat, but as year 4 dawned, the variable changed. Enter Candace, a new player on the board. Candace was a curated upgrade, youthful, ambitious, and striking. She became a fixture at their social dinners, her laughter echoing too brightly at Richard's mediocre wit. Lena observed the unfolding disaster with a clinical detachment. She watched Richard preen like a peacock in the girl's presence. Business summits were merely a veil for their trysts. Lena might have raged once, but she was finished scavenging for affection from a man who had forgotten the deity he once adored. Half a year ago, the curtain fell. Richard carelessly left his phone exposed, revealing a message from Candace. Last night was a dream, it read. Lena sat in the heavy silence, auditing months of betrayals, clans and jokes shared nights, and Richard's casual cruelty toward his wife. She returned the device, maintained her composure, and served dinner as if nothing had changed. But the version of Lena that Richard understood, that woman perished in the cold light of that discovery. This was the breaking point. Lena traded her tears for strategy. She contacted her most lethal asset, Grace Torres. The brilliant mind behind Morrison declared, and I will do it with the precision of a surgeon. She required time to assemble the evidence, finalize the filings, and insulate her vast holdings. She would not simply walk away. She intended to erase the foundation beneath his unfaithful feet. She envisioned a singular moment where Richard would realize he had traded a sovereign for a shadow. Her theater of choice, the grand annual gala. 6 months of meticulous planning for a total annihilation. When Grace asked about Richard's role, Lena replied with a chilling apathy. He would attend for the status. Grace understood then. This was not a mere separation. It was an ambush. Lena would not explain her power to the elite. She would demonstrate it. For half a year, she performed the role of the dutiful phantom while engineering his downfall. As Richard looked past her, she was fortifying her grip on the crown. Now at the gala in a lethal crimson gown, she finally breathes. She lingers in the shadows, observing the board of directors and her unfaithful husband on the dais. She selected this vantage point with purpose. She wanted a perfect view of the exact second his world began to burn. She craved a view of every micro-expression during the collapse. Richard sat with an arrogant proximity to Candace, radiating ownership. Candace herself was a triumph of costly artifice. Blonde locks, a designer gown worth a small fortune, and a laughter that rang with a hollow melodic charm. She was working the room with expert grace, completely unaware that the architect of her impending ruin was watching her with the gaze of a hawk. Patricia was enchanted by Candace. She saw the ideal daughter-in-law, sophisticated, social, and possessing the right lineage. In her eyes, she was the antidote to everything Lena represented. Lena recalls the evening Candace invaded their dinner 8 months prior. Patricia was radiant, extolling the virtues of the girl's philanthropic efforts. She bestowed upon Candace the validation she had withheld from Lena for years. It was a conspiracy of the elite, and Lena was the only one not invited to the table. From symphony boards to exclusive galas, Candace was the image of perfection. Lena arrived to find her already claiming the seat beside Richard's vacant chardy, as was his custom. Candace offered a smile that was both polished and predatory. "You must be Lena," she cooed. "Richard mentions you so often." It was curious, Lena thought, considering he had not spoken her name in months. Then Candace began discussing their new venture. It was the first discordant note in a symphony of betrayal. Feels. Listen, Richard's loyalty was always for sale, bought by ego or cold cash. Candace was merely his latest trophy, a permanent fixture at every gala and family dinner. While Patricia sang the girls' praises and mocked Lena for her missing hours, she had no clue. Those appointments weren't social calls. They were high-stakes board meetings and strategic acquisitions. While the family played house with a stranger, Lena was the silent architect keeping the Morrison Holdings empire from crumbling. Feels. To Patricia, Lena was a ghost with endless excuses. Richard had long since stopped standing up for his wife, leaving her behind in his race for something new. But data leaves a trail. 6 months ago, the infidelity became an undeniable record. Richard's own words revealed his resentment, while Candace fueled the fire by promising him he deserved more. The ultimate betrayal? He branded Lena as suffocating. The man she built a life with was casting her as the antagonist in his midlife fantasy. Feels. Suffocating. The word felt like a punchline. Lena was desperately trying to anchor their sinking marriage, yet he viewed her devotion as a weakness. Richard promises his mistress he will depart once he secures enough funds for his poor wife. Candace actually labels this betrayal as noble. It is the height of arrogance. He genuinely believes he is the provider. Viewing his partner as a charity case he must pay off before he can finally be free. Feels. He remains blissfully unaware that every cent in their accounts belongs to her. The mansion, the status, even his reputation are funded by her wealth, masked behind layers of corporate shells. Feels. Every victory he boasted about was secretly bankrolled by her brilliance. Richard performs the role of the suffering martyr, pretending to stay out of pity while calculating a settlement for helpless Lena. Feels. Watching him share a laugh with his mistress, she felt a hollow, icy silence. Then a waiter broke the spell. Feels. She nearly spoke up. Her name is Morrison, not Bennett. But the facade only needed 15 more minutes. Daniel, the waiter, is visibly agitated. He insists she does not belong back here at the service tables, yet that is exactly where her husband relegated her. Daniel is a veteran of Morrison Tower. He served her father for decades. He recognizes the true power in the room. Seeing his real boss tucked away like a dirty secret is a disrespect he cannot stomach. Feels. None of us find this acceptable, Daniel mutters. The entire staff, from the busboys to the servers, watches her with a fierce, protective gaze. They know whose signature is on their checks. They see their legitimate employer being mocked by a charlatan. Lena assures him that justice is coming in mere moments. Daniel catches the iron in her stare and nods. The staff is ready. 10 minutes until the hierarchy collapses. Grace's text confirms it. The board is ready. The eyes of the world are waiting. Feels. Your father would be proud. Those words cut right through her. Thomas Morrison built an empire and taught her that silence is a lethal weapon. He believed the most dangerous player is the one no one notices. For 5 years, she played the part of the patient wife. She kept her peace as Richard morphed into a cold stranger. She was silent through the deceit and the infidelity. She let him believe he was the victor, all while arming herself to reclaim everything. Feels. Tonight, the masquerade ends. Across the ballroom, Richard flirts with Candace like a schoolboy, oblivious to the secrets vibrating in his pocket. The entire family puts on a united front, though they have treated Lena like a phantom for years. Feels. It was not one big explosion, just 1,000 tiny cuts to erode her worth. Lena remembers 2 years ago, when Patricia's eyes turned to ice as she finally voiced her disdain. That specific brand of cruelty is about to find its equal. Feels. This is the ultimate reckoning. Feels. Patricia once sneered that Richard needed a wife with lineage and social standing to elevate the family. When Lena brought up love, the matriarch laughed. Love is for fiction, she countered. Marriage is a transaction between equals. Feels. Then came the killing blow. She called Lena a nobody who trapped her son during a moment of weakness. No career, no pedigree, just a parasite spending their fortune. Lena left that night claiming a headache. Feels. But she carried something else, a flawless bloop for her revenge. Feels. Lena wept in her car, not because of the insults, but because Richard was indifferent. He barely noticed her departure. That was the moment her transformation began. She traded tears for labor, diving into the confidential reports of Morrison Holdings. Feels. She tallied the millions she had earned while they treated her like staff. She was the true architect of their prosperity, no matter what pathetic role they assigned her. She chose to remain in the shadows just a bit longer. Feels. Let them believe she is nothing. Feels. Grace arrives like a specter in maroon, signaling the 5-minute mark. She remarks that the red dress is a brilliant choice because Lena is now impossible to ignore. That is the strategy, feels. Lena wants the world to witness exactly where her husband tried to bury her. Grace glances at the head table, promising that Richard's regret will be absolute. Lena simply observes him. The infidelity, the deceit, feels. The constant disrespect, it all comes due tonight. Their union was a failure, but now she is serving a cold plate of truth, feels. Lena confesses they were a mismatch from the start. She simply ignored the warning signs. Grace argues he never deserved her, but Lena accepts her own role in this tragedy. Grace asks if she is prepared for the moment the reality crashes down, feels. Lena has envisioned this 1,000 times. She does not expect heartbreak, she expects humiliation. There is a vast gulf between the two. Losing a partner is painful, but having your public failure broadcast to the world, that is total destruction, feels. Grace calls it reality, feels. It is the simple truth. Richard did not love her. He loved his own reflection and the power he thought he held. Tonight, the public will discover he tried to erase the very woman who owns his legacy. The lights flicker and dim as the performance starts. Grace offers a final encouraging nod before heading to the booth. Every screen in the hall is about to display the fraud, the data, and the hidden truth. Everything Lena has prepared is going live. There is no retreat now. The game is over, feels. The stage is prepared for the final judgment. Jeffrey Santos taps the microphone, and silence grips the room. Richard and his kin sit like monarchs, blissfully unaware that their reality is about to shatter, feels. They have no concept that their kingdom is built on a foundation of lies. Lena adjusts her silk dress and exhales. Half a year of silence and meticulous strategy culminate in this breath. Her marriage is a corpse, but her truth is ready to erupt, feels. The forgotten wife is stepping into the light to incinerate their lives, feels. She was never a secondary character. Tonight she proves she was the protagonist all along. Jeffrey's voice thunders through the audio system, in her building, at her event. Richard is still lost in the fog, sharp as a blade, casting the room into darkness. She cannot see the crowd, but the collective gasp is audible. It is a tidal wave of shock, a physical blow to the room's ego. Every step toward the podium carries the weight of years. She is taking back her life, feels. Her heels strike the marble like a ticking clock in the stillness. Heads turn, and the air thickens with panicked whispers. Is that his wife? What is she doing? Richard is frozen, his glass of champagne shattered on the floor like a casualty, feels. Candace struggles to breathe while Patricia looks like a general who just lost the final battle. James stares blankly, his mind unable to compute the woman he ignored for a lifetime. Lena does not flinch, feels. She simply marches forward as their collective world begins to dissolve, feels. She has rehearsed this entrance 1,000 times. No haste, no doubt, just the deliberate, steady rhythm of a woman who has finally claimed her power. She reaches the stairs and Jeffrey offers a supportive glance, murmuring that she is ready. As Lena approaches the microphone, the room comes into sharp focus. The elite of Morrison Holdings and the giants of industry, the very people who ignored her for years, are now compelled to sit and witness her coronation, feels. There they sit, the financiers, the press, and the family that tried to erase her. Lena takes hold of the podium, grounding herself, no more shrinking to protect Richard's fragile pride. Good evening, she announces, feels, her voice cutting through the atmosphere like a razor. I realize there is confusion, so allow me to clarify. My name is Lena Morrison, daughter of Thomas Morrison. For 5 years, feels, I have served as the chief executive and sole owner of this entire corporation. The silence instantly erupts into shock, feels. Absolute mayhem ensues. The audience is hunting for a reality that feels like a fever dream. Richard bolts upright, his screaming against the floor as he shouts that she is a liar. Lena meets his gaze, immovable and frigid. I am not lying, Richard, she responds calmly, but I have been quiet, enduring the lie of our marriage for too long. She dismisses him and addresses the room. My father cultivated this firm from nothing. He transformed a single asset into a dynasty through sheer will, feels. Real estate, technology, and medicine, his vast empire became hers in a heartbeat. When he passed 5 years ago, he bequeathed his world to his only child. Lena had been his shadow since she was 22, a silent witness to a legend. Now, feels. The monitors glow as Grace begins the presentation. There stands Thomas Morrison, the giant, with Lena by his side in every meeting while the public overlooked her. To many, Morrison was the peak of integrity, feels. He taught her that true power never needs to scream. He found strength in the profound nature of silence. Heals. She learned that lesson perhaps too well, remaining in the shadows for far too long. Images of father and daughter flicker across the screen. At 27, she was grieving and overwhelmed, yet surrounded by a circle of steel. Heals. Her board and legal counsel provided the structure, allowing her to rule while remaining unseen. She craved the influence without the blinding glare of the spotlight. Richard appears skeletal now, clutching his mother as she whispers venom in his ear. Heals. He watches the screen like a man attending his own burial. Then Lena speaks softly, "I met someone." Heals. They met at a gala identical to this one. He was charismatic and gentle, reviving a joy she thought was lost forever. He pursued her with no knowledge of her title or her massive net worth. To her, it felt like a pure, ultimate romance. Heals. Their wedding portrait appears on screen, a flawless, curated lie. That night, she chose to keep her empire a secret. She wanted a partner who saw the woman, not the woman's bank account. Heals. She longed for a life that was entirely separate from the heavy shadow of the Morrison legacy. Heals. For 5 years, she inhabited 2 distinct worlds. She managed a global conglomerate from her study, while her husband believed she was out shopping for vanity. She orchestrated billion-dollar deals, while he boasted about $50 million crumbs. Heals. She provided livelihoods for thousands, while he insisted she had no direction. Richard recoils as the reality finally takes hold. She is not there for mere humiliation. She is there because the era of secrets has ended. Tonight, Heals, the grand masquerade is over. Morrison Holdings finally reveals its true architect. No more deception. No more apologies. Heals. Under her quiet stewardship, the firm expanded by 40%. They entered 6 new markets and financed medical miracles while creating over 3,000 jobs. The displays radiate with the data of her triumph. Heals. But tonight offers a deeper revelation. She is establishing the Morrison Foundation. This initiative will support the young innovators the traditional system overlooked. They will offer capital, mentorship, deals, and the tools to construct a tangible future. This is about building an equitable world, not just serving the elite. It is a masterful stroke of leadership. Heals. The thunderous applause fills the room, and Lena lets the sound envelop her. She then unveils a new division dedicated to sustainable urban growth. Green, equitable cities designed to breathe. This has been her private mission for 2 years, Heals, and it finally steps into the light. The board members nod in unison. They recognize the strategist who has been guiding them all along. But then her voice turns to ice. Heals. She announces a comprehensive audit of every partnership and investment in the portfolio. There will be no exceptions made for anyone. Heals. She is purging the ranks and severing ties with those without integrity. One has no place at her table. Her gaze fixes on Richard with surgical precision.
His fortune.
Has been a parasite on her legacy for too long, and she is finally cutting the cord. Patricia stands frozen, pale as a phantom. Lena expresses gratitude to the loyal few who supported her when she was merely a face in the gallery. She has demonstrated that she earned this throne through merit, not birthright. Heals. Jeffrey offers her a glass, and Lena raises a toast. To Thomas Morrison, she declares, who showed me that true power is a silent storm, and to a future anchored in the unvarnished truth. The room erupts in chaos. Heals. It is a standing ovation fueled by sheer collective shock. Journalists type with frantic urgency. Business associates question their entire worldview in an instant. Richard appears diminished and broken. His arrogance has vanished. Heals. Replaced by a vacant, hollow stare. He realized far too late that he never knew her at all. Heals. The wife he believed he controlled was merely a performance. Lena maintained that mask flawlessly while constructing a billion-dollar realm in the dark. Candace looks on in horror, realizing her prize is an empty vessel. She believed she was stealing a victim, but she only assisted in destroying her own future. Patricia stands paralyzed, gasping as if the air itself has turned thin. All her elitist remarks about breeding and status have finally turned to ash in her mouth. Heals. The ballroom feels like the aftermath of a quiet revolution. James appears drained, like a debtor facing an inevitable collection. Heals. Lena sets her glass down with a definitive click and invites the guests to resume their dinner, an act of supreme composure. She mentions that business briefings will arrive next week before making a calm exit. Jeffrey remains by her side. Heals. A loyal sentinel. The crowd parts with a reverence that borders on a bow. The patronizing pity has vanished. Now there is only raw, unfiltered respect for the sovereign. Heals. Titans of industry suddenly crave her smallest acknowledgement. They are eager to discuss her new environmental ventures. Everyone is desperate for the favor of the monarch they once dismissed. Lena performs the role with grace, feels, remaining entirely in command of the room. This is her true habitat, far removed from the domestic cage where she played the submissive wife. Richard attempts to intercept her, appearing disheveled and frantic. Security prepares to intervene, feels, but Lena signals them to stand down. Let him witness her power, let him look, feels. Patricia hauls Richard toward the doors like a child being banished. James and a bewildered Candace follow closely, the Bennett family experiencing a total collapse of status. Lena watches the debris clear itself from the floor, feels. She has reclaimed her dignity in the public eye, and their petty drama is now just static. Grace leans in to whisper that the performance was flawless. Lena asks how soon Richard will attempt a confrontation. Security is monitoring him, feels. Grace assures her. Good, Lena accepts a fresh drink. Her work here is done, feels. From this moment, dialogue will be strictly between legal counsel. The divorce petition is already prepared for tomorrow morning. She is determined to cauterize this toxic wound once and for all. The gala continues, feels, but the conversation centers entirely on the hidden tycoon and the man who underestimated her. Lena moves through the throngs masking her weariness with a scarlet dress and a formidable new reputation. She has become a cultural icon, feels, a synthesis of tragedy and triumph. She will not rest until she reaches her sanctuary, feels. She craves solitude to allow the magnitude of the night to settle. Yet she feels a strange, frigid peace. She has emerged from the furnace intact. She declared her truth, and the world remained whole. In fact, her horizon has expanded, feels. The lingering echoes of applause still resonate when Richard suddenly breaches the perimeter. Security maintains a close watch, but they cannot easily obstruct a husband without creating a public spectacle in the center of the ballroom, feels. A moment of messy confrontation is now inevitable, feels. He seizes her arm with a desperate grip, whispering that they must speak privately. Lena remains frozen. She observes his frantic state and feels only a vast emptiness. He is suffocating under the weight of his own public shame. He accuses her of insanity and calls her hidden wealth a form of fraud. He is enraged by her years of silence. Lena does not react to his venom. She calmly explains that she never hid her soul. She simply felt no need to announce her value to a man who failed to see it, feels. He drags her into an alcove, with security trailing like silent phantoms. He screams that this entire situation is madness. He demands to know why she kept the corporation a secret throughout their entire marriage, feels. Lena peers into his eyes and recognizes a familiar void. He is not inquiring about her feelings. He is obsessed with the capital. He viewed her identity as a currency he was entitled to spend. She tells him she simply wanted to be loved for the woman, feels, not the account balance. He responds with a cynical scoff, feels. She tells him she never changed. She simply chose to keep her financial standing a private matter. His jaw leash for his meager efforts while she quietly governed an empire. Lena explains that she sought to build a life founded on something more meaningful than power dynamics. How noble, he sneers, with a bitter snarl. He is consumed by the public humiliation he just endured. The shame devours him, because his true nature has been exposed in the harshest light imaginable, feels. His concern is purely ego, not her heart. She reminds him that he was the one who dismissed her. It is her company, and he might have realized that had he ever chosen to listen rather than lecture. He attempts to label her a deceiver, but she silences him instantly. She reveals her knowledge of Candace, admitting she has known the truth for 6 months. Richard turns deathly pale, his lips trembling without making a sound. He stammers that it is not what she thinks, feels. It is precisely what she suspects, she retorts. She read every communication, including the messages where he called her needy, and plotted to abandon her. She offers a cold, sharp smile, noting that his financial future is now remarkably complicated. He is stunned by her surveillance, but she reminds him that he left the gate wide open. She refuses to feel guilt for uncovering his betrayal. He must look in the mirror to find the architect of his own ruin, feels. He is bewildered that she remained silent for half a year while knowing everything. She explains she was meticulously preparing her departure. She wanted a strategic exit, unlike his clumsy and impulsive schemes. Then Patricia arrives, feels, her heels echoing with predatory precision. She demands a private family consultation. Lena corrects her, they are not family. Patricia attempts to weaponize the marriage vows, but Lena is already reaching into her bag. Feels. She has anticipated this specific moment all evening. The envelope is finally brought into the light. Feels. These are the divorce papers, Lena declares. Her attorneys will contact his tomorrow morning. Richard stares at the documents as if they were a live explosive. He whispers in disbelief, asking if she is serious. Feels. Lena informs him that the marriage expired long ago, and tonight serves as the final burial. Patricia begins a sermon on the sanctity of vows, but Lena simply gestures toward a recoiling Candace. This is merely about the fortune, Patricia snaps. Feels. She accuses Lena of orchestrating a public shaming. She is rapidly losing all composure. Feels. Lena finds a grim humor in their outrage. They mistake her honesty for an attack. Yes, this was calculated. She has built a fortress of assets that Richard can never breach. When Patricia weaponizes the threat of a judge, Lena welcomes the fire. She wants the legal record to reflect the stark contrast between her commercial empire and his infidelity. Let the world witness the archives of a wife who thrived in silence while her husband strayed. Feels. This narrative will dominate the headlines, a public execution of the Bennett reputation. Patricia is paralyzed by fury, whispering threats of dared consequences. But Lena has nothing left to fear. For 5 years, she was a ghost in her own home, buried by their indifference. If they want a scandal, she will provide a masterpiece. She has the facts, the funds, and the lawyers to finish it.
James finally breaks the tension.
Admitting the painful truth, their son was the architect of his own ruin. Feels. You discarded her because you mistook her silence for insignificance. Now the bill has come due. Richard's voice trembles, pleading for a paternal loyalty that James no longer offers. The patriarch sees the board clearly now. His son betrayed vows and humiliated his wife, only to discover she commands more influence than the entire Bennett dynasty. While Patricia shrieks about a legacy that is already ash, Lena remains untouched by the noise. She offers one final command. Watch her leave. Feels. At the threshold, Lena delivers a final surgical strike. She informs Patricia that every Bennett investment linked to Morrison Holdings faces a forensic audit at dawn. If there is rot, and they both know there is, she will sever the ties instantly. Feels. She disappears into the night before a response can form. A wall of security holds the family at bay, while Richard's cries echo fruitlessly behind her. Grace remarks on the sheer intensity of the collapse, but Lena feels only the clarity of the end. Feels. No more shadows. Feels. Lena refuses to let Richard dictate the fallout. Though the media is circling for a comment, she delays the storm until tomorrow morning. Her priority is simple. Feels. Endure the gala and retreat to her sanctuary, a penthouse purchased with the currency of her own repressed fury. She glides through the crowd with the poise of a sovereign, managing shareholders with effortless grace. Feels. She presents the facade of a steel executive, yet internally she is a fragile structure under immense pressure. The gravity of her own revolution is starting to take its toll. Feels. The weight of her public revelation and private war finally hits. On a secluded balcony, she gasps for air against the biting winter chill. For years, she camouflaged her true self, and now that the mask is gone, she feels a strange vacancy. When Grace checks on her, Lena confesses that her expected power has been replaced by a hollow ache. Grace notes that this is the price of liberation. When you burn your world for the truth, you must stand in the ashes. Feels. Lena questions if that life ever truly belonged to her, or if she was merely a passenger in a fiction authored by Richard. Grace insists she must not internalize his shame. His betrayal was his own undoing. Though Lena regrets her long silence, Grace reframes it as survival in a tank full of predators. With the divorce papers finalized and the secret out, her reality has shifted. She fears becoming a pariah, a stranger to her own social circle. But Grace assures her that true loyalty survives the fire. Feels. Her father's old warning echoes. Extreme wealth often poisons genuine affection. People are drawn to the gold before they ever notice the soul. Lena once believed concealing her fortune would preserve her heart. Feels. But she now sees that a foundation of secrets cannot support a marriage. Steeling herself, she prepares to return to the ballroom. Grace suggests the audience has had their fill of spectacle, but Lena isn't performing for them. Feels. She is standing for Morrison Holdings in her father's memory. She cannot shatter, while thousands depend on her strength. Feels. She refuses to collapse over the remains of a failed union. Grace urges her to prioritize her own healing over the company balance sheets, but Lena finds the logistics of business far more manageable than the mess of a broken heart. As they re-enter the hall, the event draws to a close. Vultures linger, searching for more gossip, but the Bennett chairs remain vacant. That empty table stands as a monument to a life reduced to cinders, a single, volatile evening. The transition is complete. It is over. Heels. Staring at the void, Lena ponders if revealing her strength earlier would have altered their trajectory. But she knows the truth. The decay was structural. Richard never sought an equal. He desired a decorative accessory he could manipulate. Heels. He wanted a woman who would accept his crumbs with a smile. Lena was never that submissive ghost. She simply donned the disguise until the fabric began to suffocate her. By 11 p.m., the last of the guests have departed, Heels, leaving her as the solitary figure on a now silent stage. Heels. Jeffrey delivers the final security debrief, while Grace coordinates the exit of the staff. Lena stands in the center of the quiet ballroom, haunted by the success of her own vengeance. She has reclaimed her identity, her agency, and her empire. Yet, Heels, the air feels heavy with isolation. Grace gently guides her toward the doors, insisting it is time to return to her true sanctuary. Lena follows, her resistance gone. As the elevator seals her in, she takes one final look at the room. It is vacant. Heels, a hollow shell of a memory. Heels. This floor witnessed the death of the submissive wife and the birth of a sovereign executive. Tomorrow the press will feast. Richard will hide behind his counsel while Patricia calculates her retaliation. Heels. Even the mistress will fade once the source of the wealth is severed. But for now, Lena retreats to her penthouse, a bastion of her own making, untouched by Richard's presence. Here she can finally invite the grief in, Heels, free from the scrutiny of the public eye. After 5 years of servitude, tonight belongs to her. Tomorrow she rebuilds. For now she breathes. Heels. Tonight she reclaims the name Lena Morrison. She is drained yet liberated. Her sanctuary is draped in silence when she enters, a space secured through a shell company for this exact reckoning. High on the 27th floor, Heels, the windows reach toward the stars, mirroring her father's legacy. Grace has already transferred her private life here, the hidden ledgers and encrypted files. Lena discards her heels, walking barefoot across the cold stone. Heels. Her silk dress trailing like a whisper, she gazes at the skyline, her reflection a shimmering phantom against the night. Heels. Outside, Richard is submerged in shock while Patricia rages at her attorneys. The mistress is likely already scrubbing her presence. Lena has allowed the bridges to burn. She will no longer carry their weight. Heels. Her device pulses with 47 messages and 15 missed connections. Her name is the new obsession of the city. Shareholders offer praise and reporters beg for a quote. Everyone craves a moment with the newly crowned queen, Heels, but her energy is spent. Watching the screen glow, she feels a chilling tranquility. The conflict persists, but she is safe within her fortress. Heels. Then the notifications from Richard appear. He is erratic, oscillating between fury and desperation, demanding a conversation. He believes he is owed an explanation despite his own betrayals. He is mistaken. Heels. She systematically erases his presence from her screen. His only remaining path to her is through her legal counsel. Grace enters with a tray of tea, her presence a silent promise of loyalty. Lena attempts to dismiss her, but Grace is immovable. Heels. She offers the warm cup and takes her place. They are bonded in this campaign now. There is no retreat. Heels. Lena admits she finally needs to speak. That evening was a more demanding performance than any hostile takeover she has ever managed. A faint, tired smile touches her lips as she sits. The execution was flawless. Heels. Perhaps surpassing her own expectations. Grace affirms her strength, describing her as an unapologetic force of nature. She suggests Lena's father would have been radiant with pride. The comment draws a sharp ache to Lena's chest. Heels. She suspects he would have criticized her for lingering so long with a man whose true nature was revealed years ago. Heels. Perhaps he understood that affection is often sustained by a blind hope. It forces you to remain when you should flee, waiting for a redemption that never arrives. Lena drinks her tea, finding her father's spirit in the warmth of the ceramic. Heels. She spent half a decade waiting for the man she once loved to resurface. But Grace reminds her that people do not regress. They change, and occasionally, they simply move beyond us. Lena marvels at her friend's wisdom. Heels. Grace credits her insight to watching Lena endure the unbearable. They settle into a dense, shared quiet. Heels. Beyond the glass, the city lights mask a myriad of secret sorrows. Grace cautions that the impending divorce will be a brutal conflict, even with a prenuptial agreement. Then, Lena reveals the truth. No such document exists. Heels. Grace is stunned into silence. How is that possible? Richard assumed she was destitute. In his arrogance, why would a king need protection from a woman he thought had nothing? It will be a public execution. Heels. Richard will surely attempt to seize half of Morrison Holdings, but Lena has archived every transaction and receipt since their wedding day. Heels. I possess the records. He contributed nothing to our expansion. I was the architect of this empire long before he entered the frame. Even our home was acquired with my funds through obscured accounts. Heels. My attorneys have been preparing for this war for months. Grace is in awe of the foresight. You calculated every move, she notes.
I was forced to.
Once I decided to leave, perfection was the only option. Richard has familial wealth and powerful allies. Heels. Without this defense, they would have erased me. They will still attack, Grace warns. Let them. I hold the one weapon they cannot buy, the truth. Heels. Every syllable I uttered is anchored in objective truth. I had no need for deception, only to emerge from the shadows. This moral high ground is a fortress they cannot breach. Lena's phone vibrated. It was her solicitor, Harold Sterling. Heels. I witnessed the broadcast, he remarked. Cinematic and potent. Shall we initiate the filing? Tomorrow morning, she answered. He will be served by midday. A no-fault divorce rooted in my singular achievements. Heels. I am retaining the kingdom because I am the architect who laid every stone myself. Heels. That is the strategy, but his counsel will play a depraved game. They will argue he provided emotional stability and maintained the household, a fabrication, yet irrelevant. They will spin that fiction regardless. Heels. Prepare for a total character assassination. They will frame you as a calculating deceiver who manipulated her spouse for a settlement. Lena offered a caustic laugh. I was the source of the wealth. I was guarding my autonomy from him. Heels. Not pursuing his. Reality will not hinder their rhetoric. They will manufacture any falsehood to survive. We must ensure our evidence burns their narrative to ash. Heels. The archives are complete. Harold's tone grew somber. This will turn grotesque, Lena. Cruel and broadcasted for the masses. Richard is hemorrhaging power and his relatives are terrified. Desperate men resort to desperate measures. Heels. Secure your perimeter. Ensure your staff remains on high alert. And above all, do not engage with Richard. Every interaction must flow through me from this moment. Understood, she stated. Excellent. Seek rest. The true conflict commences at dawn. Heels. Lena disconnected and gazed at the void of the screen, contemplating the sunrise. It was the heavy silence preceding the hurricane. Heels. 6 months ago, upon uncovering the evidence of Richard's infidelity, she envisioned this twilight, the catharsis of authenticity, the persona sana finally discarded. She anticipated weightlessness, but instead she felt hollowed out, exhausted. Heels. Vulnerable. Any second thoughts? Grace inquired. None. But dismantling a shared existence is merely the prologue to a lengthy funeral. Tonight was the eulogy. Next come the litigators, the paparazzi, and the debris of my history. Heels. You are not beginning at zero, Grace countered. You possess the corporation, the prestige, and the influence. I own objects, Grace. That is not the same as possessing a genuine life. Heels. When did you last act purely for yourself? Not for the shareholders or the public brand, but for Lena. She pondered, finding a vacuum, perhaps 5 years ago. Before the facade, before the contract. Heels. Before she transformed into a specter in her own residence. Back when she was simply a woman in mourning. I cannot recall, she breathed. Then. That is the essential labor. Discovering the essence of Lena Morrison when the spotlights fade. Heels. That sounds daunting, she admitted. It sounds vital. Lena migrated to the window. The metropolis throbbed beneath her like a frantic pulse. Heels. Countless souls moved below, each carrying their own quiet wars. She had spent half a decade diminishing her own stature so Richard could feel monumental, suppressing her voice for his pride, warping her identity to suit his requirements. Heels. She had lost the map to her former self. Tomorrow the veil would lift. The mystery was over. The public would recognize Lena Morrison as a titan, a figure of staggering influence. The media would dismantle her reputation bit by bit. But tonight, Heels. Draped in her crimson silk while the stillness embraced her, Lena made a private commitment to her soul. Heels. She would never play small again. No more concealment. No more performing the role of the subordinate for a man's fragile security. She sacrificed 5 years of her existence to that error. Never again. You are correct, she informed Grace. Heels. I must reclaim the woman I abandoned. I need to know my true face when I am not on a stage. But where is the origin point? Lena smirked. I know. My father's legacy. The intimate letters and diaries he bequeathed to me, Eels. I suppressed them because the sorrow was overwhelming, but now I am prepared to break the seals. Eels. I am ready to listen to the messages he left behind. A wise beginning, Grace noted. They spent the next hour charting the coming turbulence. Grace would spearhead the public relations defense while Lena stabilized the firm. Eels. She had to demonstrate that her private upheaval would not topple her professional throne. Between the skirmishes, she would hunt for her own ghost. At midnight, Grace departed. Lena secured the entrance, standing solitary in her private sanctum. Eels. This was her domain, the one arena where the mask dissolved. She shed the red silk for something familiar and worn. Eels. She scrubbed away the cosmetics. In the glass, she saw a long-lost companion, the woman she was before Richard. Her device buzzed once more. It was him. Lena, this is fraud, the message read. You will suffer for this public shame. Eels. My legal counsel will ruin you. She purged it immediately. His intimidations were hollow. His team would strike, but they would falter. She had violated no statutes. She was simply more formidable than he ever perceived. That is not deception, Eels, that is simply evolution. She reclined in bed and felt a weight shift. Not yet peace, but a prelude. Eels. The truth had finally been spoken. She had seized back her identity. She was constructing a reality that did not demand she shrink for a man's delicate ego. Tomorrow would be a theater of war with legal conflicts, media predators, Eels, and Richard's indignation. But tomorrow also held a sacred promise, a chance to govern her empire without a disguise, a chance to be integrated in every room she graced. She desired to know what a visceral, Eels, honest existence felt like after years of performance. Lena surrendered to the night, and for the first time in years, fell into a heavy, dreamless sleep. Eels. No more restless visions, no more panics about Richard uncovering her secrets, just the quiet oblivion she had earned. The storm was nearing, but Lena Morrison was prepared. She was done with apologies. She was the chief executive officer. Eels. She was the heir of Thomas Morrison. She was a woman of fortune and authority that Richard could never diminish. Liberty sounded like silence. At 9:47 a.m., the divorce summons were delivered. 30 seconds later, Eels. The phone erupted with Richard's fury. The explosion had officially commenced, and she stood her ground with the stillness of a mountain. Eels. He branded her unstable, vowing he would never sign the documents. Lena stood in the marble corridor of Morrison Tower, her voice like permafrost. You lack alternatives, Richard. This union perished because of your deceptions and betrayals. Eels. He pleaded about their shared past and his injured pride. But Lena understood the reality. He had treated her like a shadow while he pursued other appetites. You constructed our life on a foundation of shifting sand, she remarked. Eels. Richard's tone descended into something dark and venomous. It was the sound of a predator losing his grip on a golden prize. Eels. He threatened a scorched earth legal campaign, asserting she only possessed wealth because of her father. Lena nearly laughed. She had expanded Morrison Holdings into a global power while he merely played the role of a husband. Eels. He claimed he bestowed status upon her, but the irony was sharp. She already commanded the room before he ever entered. He simply lacked the depth to notice. Richard groaned in sheer frustration. Eels. It was the panicked realization that the woman he thought he governed was the one holding the tether the entire time. His authority was a ghost. Eels. She ended the call before he could utter another syllable. Her palms were vibrating from the heat of 5 years of suppressed rage finally erupting. Her deputy, Grace, appeared with a look of concern. The board meeting was in 10 minutes. Eels. The hour had arrived. Lena inhaled, adjusting the weight of her responsibilities. This was the transition. She would finally enter that chamber as herself. No more proxies or smoke. Just the woman who had been ruling from the shadows this entire time. Eels. The true sovereign was finally stepping into the light of day. Eels. For the first time, they would encounter their leader without the mask. She smoothed the lines of her emerald suit and walked into the boardroom. The silence was palpable until they rose. Every director stood in a quiet gesture of loyalty. Eels. These individuals had served her father and doubted her capability, but she had commanded them from a distance. She occupied the seat at the head of the long table, her father's chair. It had been vacant for 5 years, Eels, waiting for her to finally take her place. This was her domain now, and everyone understood the hierarchy. Eels. She expressed gratitude for their transition. Walter Chin, her father's most trusted advisor, offered a knowing smile. He told her she belonged in that seat and that it was time the public knew the truth. Eels. The room vibrated with purpose as the fragments of her life finally aligned. No more theater or hidden agendas. As the session concluded, Lena surveyed the faces of her council. She knew she had to confront the headlines. Eels. I wish to address the controversy, she spoke softly. The true narrative was just commencing, and she was prepared to dictate every single chapter. Eels. She assured the board her private dissolution would not compromise the firm's integrity. Walter was supportive, but Patricia Wilson remained clinical. Richard was already poisoning the well, feeding the media a narrative of an emotionally fragile wife. Lena merely tightened her resolve. Let him talk, she stated. My legal department is documenting every utterance. One false claim, one instance of defamation, and we will dismantle his existence in a court of law. Eels. Lena refused to descend into the gutter with a man of his character. Her father, Thomas, always maintained that excellence is the only antidote to a lie. She returned to her sanctuary, his former office, and felt the surge of power. The mahogany desk felt like a gravitational anchor, still holding the faint scent of his cigars. Surveying her corporate empire from the window, she knew she had refined this legacy. Now it was her mandate to defend it. Eels. Grace delivers the update, and the headlines are incendiary. The hidden CEO dismantles her unfaithful husband. Public sentiment is fractured. Half the digital world celebrates a queen reclaiming her throne, while the skeptics question her 5 years of silence. Was there a darker motive for the secrecy? Meanwhile, Richard is ubiquitous on the news, playing the victim of a cold matriarch. The man is a master of deception, and the entire world is now his audience. Eels. Richard is delivering a performance worthy of an Academy Award, the role of the betrayed spouse. He is meticulously rewriting their history to cast himself as the martyr, conveniently erasing his own infidelities. Grace identifies it as the Bennett family hallmark, manipulation disguised as grief. As Lena watches through the screen, she remains a silent observer. Let him speak, she whispers. The weight of his own lies will eventually crush him. Eels. The situation turns toxic with surgical precision. Patricia, Richard's mother, appears on television with practiced tears, suggesting Lena's double life was a sign of mental collapse. It is a calculated move to pathologize Lena's strength, framing her success as a byproduct of trauma. From her office, Lena watches them attempt to gaslight the world. They are trying to strip away her power by simply labeling her insane. Eels. Lena is quietly furious. The conversation has shifted from Richard's infidelity to an assault on her sanity. This is a character assassination designed to dismantle her career before the legal proceedings even begin. If the board views her as unstable, her professional legacy vanishes. Grace is blunt. You have to reclaim the narrative. You must explain why you stayed in the shadows. If you don't speak now, the Bennetts will bury the truth forever. Eels. She never wanted to engage in their theatrical games, but the empire was under siege. The Bennetts were actively eroding her reputation. Fine, Lena says with chilling composure. Get me an interview, but make it significant. She chooses Business Today with Jennifer Adams, a journalist known for lethal precision. 3 hours later, the lights are on. Jennifer is unshakable. Lena feels the global gaze, everyone waiting for the moment she finally breaks. Eels. Jennifer opens with the most piercing question. Why the deception? Why hide your identity for 5 years? Lena doesn't flinch. When my father passed, I was only 27. I was a young woman handed the keys to a multi-billion-dollar kingdom while the world waited for me to fail. It was an atmosphere of total suffocation. I needed to know I could lead through merit and talent, not just because of the name Morrison. Eels. Everyone viewed my youth and my grief as weaknesses. I needed a vacuum to prove my capability without the burden of expectations. As for Richard, honestly, I wanted one sanctuary that wasn't a transaction. When we met, I was drowning in the weight of my inheritance. He saw me not the chief executive officer. I wanted to protect that singular piece of reality. Did it work? Lena offers a hollow, knowing smile. Not even close. It was a complete disaster. Eels. The union was doomed from its inception. Richard didn't desire a partner. He wanted a trophy to adorn his ego. I was never going to shrink to fit his shadow. Now his family plays dirty, weaponizing my privacy to mask his affair and the way he abandoned me at the gala. It is easier to call me unstable than to admit he was a coward. He was cold, dismissive, and replaced me with his mistress in public. Eels. People assume that gala was an act of petty vengeance. They think I wanted to humiliate him. In reality, it was an act of truth. It was the moment I fully stepped into my role at Morrison Holdings. Richard made his own choices. He chose to treat his wife as a ghost. He chose his mistress in front of the entire world. I simply gave him the stage for his own actions. Call me strategic if you must. I am done being invisible. Eels. I refused to let this marriage end with him playing the victim while I remained silent. I wanted the world to see the decay beneath his polished exterior. That was the purpose of that night. Throughout the interview, Lena rejects the burden of his failures. When the cameras cut, Jennifer is visibly impressed. Off the record, she calls Richard a fool for losing a woman of her caliber. Lena just offers a quiet thank you. She finally knows her value. Eels. This interview shifts the entire landscape. The public is finally seeing the reality behind the facade. But Bennett's will not retreat. Lena is already prepared for the conflict. Back at her office, Richard's legal team is demanding half of her assets. She doesn't even blink. She forwards the documents to Harold Sterling and moves forward. By sunset, the interview is live, and the digital world is erupting with the fallout of the drama. Eels. In just 60 minutes, the video surpasses 1 million views.
The comments are a war zone, but the tide is
People are finally witnessing the truth.
Grace calls exhilarated.
The hashtag truth not drama is dominating every platform. The public is calling out Patricia's fabrications.
They realize that protecting a massive legacy from a gold digger isn't madness.
It is brilliant business.
It is a small victory.
Grace tells her to stay focused and let the results speak. Eels. Lena stands at her window, observing the city lights. Somewhere out there, Richard is unraveling and Patricia's scrambling. And the mistress? She is likely realizing the cost of her choices. Lena is exhausted, yet she feels a profound sense of peace. The divorce will be grueling and the scrutiny will remain, but she is done playing small. She is Lena Morrison, CEO, survivor, and powerful. She is finally seen, and she isn't going anywhere. Eels. 2 months have passed, and the legal battle persists. There are depositions, press cycles, and constant maneuvers. Richard's team has tried every strategy to seize her company, but they have failed. The divorce is a slow grind because Richard is fighting for every dollar, but Lena is prevailing. Harold Sterling is a force of nature. He proved the company was hers long before Richard arrived. Now they are desperately claiming he provided emotional support during her father's death. Eels. He barely knew her during that period. They had only been dating for a few months. Harold knows they are just grasping at shadows, but the legal conflict will persist for another 90 days. Lena is patient. She has the truth and the resources. What is remarkable is how liberating it feels to be authentic. No more secret phone calls or fabricating her daily life. No more pretending to be a housewife while leading an empire. The walls have finally crumbled. Eels. Lena is fully herself now. She carries total main character energy. Morrison Holdings is reaching new heights because the leader is no longer hidden behind a veil. The employees are revitalized because they can finally look their boss in the eye. Eels. Everything moves with more efficiency without those exhausting secrets. During a board meeting, Walter Chin noticed the new atmosphere. I told him it is the power of authenticity. Being fake is draining, but being yourself is effortless. Plus, Eels, we launched the foundation to honor my father's name. Eels. The first round of applications arrived like a tidal wave. Over 2,000 stories. Grace was there, helping sort through the data on the conference table. These applicants are built brilliant minds, single parents, immigrants with brilliant minds, and young people with the same fire my father once had. Reading their words, she saw her true legacy. It wasn't about glass towers. It was about supporting the ones the system overlooked. Lena felt the urge to do more. Fund all of them, she said. Eels. We are giving them the resources to build something real, and we will double the investment next quarter. Grace warned her about the millions at stake, but that was exactly the point. Why hold on to capital when you can fundamentally alter a life? Eels. Grace smiled, saying her father would be proud. Meanwhile, the urban revitalization project was finally launching. They weren't just building luxury apartments. They were changing the definition of city living through community, green energy, Eels, and sustainable neighborhoods. Eels. This is sustainability in every sense of the word. For once, the media is focusing on her vision rather than her messy divorce, but the past always attempts to resurface. Lena encountered Richard at a conference 3 months after the gala. She rounded a corner and nearly collided with him. Lena, he said, looking like a statue. He was alone. The rumor was his affair with Candace had ended in disaster once she realized he had no personal wealth or influence. Heels. Richard. The name hung in the air as crowds moved past, oblivious to the history between them. "You look well," he finally said. "I am," she replied. "And you?" "I am. Surviving." He looked around, his voice dropping to a low tone. "Can we talk?" Just for a moment, checked her watch. She had 15 minutes before her panel. "Fine." They stepped into a quiet corner. Richard was different, haggard, tired, the gala polish completely gone. "I wanted to apologize," he said, "for everything. You deserved much better." Heels. "Why now?" she asked. To see how I destroyed everything we had. You were right. I was intimidated by your light, so I tried to diminish you instead of being a man." "Yes," she whispered. "You did. I am not asking for forgiveness. I just had to say it. You were an elite partner, and I was too weak to realize it." Lena felt the tension finally break. "I am stopping the legal battle. Keep it all, Richard." Heels. Richard insisted on this final act of contrition, the first spark of decency in a long, dark history. A faint smile touched his face as he wished her a partner who wouldn't fear her brilliance. Then he was gone. Lena stood amidst the crowd, Heels, feeling the crushing weight of their history dissolve. Perhaps redemption is a slow process, not an event. It didn't erase the scars, but it offered a quiet, honest resolution. Hours later, she took the stage, Heels, her voice carrying a newfound fire that captivated every soul in the room. Heels. The room was transfixed. After she spoke, power players descended with offers of collaboration and growth. The old labels, the wife, the silent partner, had withered away. She was Lena Morrison, an architect of her own destiny. That evening, Heels. Draped in royal blue, she radiated an inner strength that no longer required permission. No more shrinking, no more fading into the background. Standing at the center of her world, her presence was an absolute, unshakable fact. Heels. She had stopped apologizing for the space she occupied. She had finally claimed her throne. Heels. Observers noted her transformation. Where a ghost once stood, a woman of substance had emerged. "I just stopped pretending," she told them. The result was a visible radiance. Later, in the quiet solitude of the evening, Heels, she found herself humming, a melody long forgotten under the weight of her old life. Joy had returned, not as a visitor but as a permanent resident. She had endured the furnace of public scandal and a fractured marriage. She didn't just endure. Heels, she flourished. Morrison Holdings wasn't just a company anymore. It was a testament to her strength. Heels. Her reputation as a formidable leader was solidifying. Her impact was undeniable, and a rare sense of fulfillment cold. Then, a call from Grace interrupted her. Grace urged her to step away from the desk, mentioning her brother Adrian. He was a tech visionary working in the nonprofit sector. Tomorrow he would be discussing accessible education. Grace insisted it was a perfect match for the Morrison Foundation. He was doing revolutionary work that Lena simply had to see for herself. Heels. "Send the details," Lena agreed. Grace's parting words were cryptic, "just stay open-minded." Before Lena could question the mystery, the line went dead. She smiled, recognizing Grace's subtle attempts to nudge her back toward human connection. Heels. Love was the furthest thing from Lena's mind. Her energy was entirely consumed by the resurrection of her empire and her identity. A lecture on technology felt like safe harbor. It was a professional obligation, not a romantic pursuit. Heels. It was about strategy, networking, and the cold logic of business. Heels. A standard Tuesday in a life finally lived with integrity. Driving home under a canopy of city lights, she reflected on her journey. Only months ago, she was an invisible guest at her own life's gala. Now, from the debris of her past, she had forged a person she actually respected. She embraced the woman who refused to be minimized. Richard Erd's belated apology was a mild comfort, but it couldn't touch the new foundation she had built for herself. Heels. The marriage had been a hollow shell long before the infidelity. They were mismatched fragments of a broken whole. Now Lena stood complete, unapologetic and self-reliant. That was more than enough. She retreated to her sanctuary, Heels, the one place where the performance of life could finally cease. Looking ahead, her calendar was a map of purpose. Adrian's lecture, the Foundation's inaugural grants, and upcoming projects. Heels. Her world was finally populated by meaningful work and authentic connections. She was no longer waiting for her life to begin. It was already underway. Heels. The legalities of divorce would eventually conclude, and the tabloids would find fresh prey. Lena remained focused on her father's legacy and her own burgeoning world. She was revitalized, standing on the threshold of a new chapter. Feels. The auditorium hummed with the energy of a massive crowd. Grace had praised Adrian, but Lena hadn't anticipated a visionary leader. Grace whispered his achievements: 50,000 people trained in 3 years. He wasn't merely an educator, Feels. He was a revolutionary, a force of nature reshaping the landscape of opportunity for those left behind. Feels. His mission was to empower the forgotten corners of society, teaching them the language of the future. Adrian had recognized the systemic divide and chose to build a bridge. Lena was intrigued by his commitment. This wasn't a side project, Feels, it was his life's work. He had abandoned a lucrative corporate career to pursue true impact. As the lights dimmed and Adrian stepped into the glow, Lena felt herself leaning forward. He possessed a quiet, Feels, magnetic strength, a man whose casual appearance was secondary to the profound purpose he carried. Feels. "Good evening," Adrian began, and the room fell into an expectant hush. He opened with a provocative critique of the current educational system, instantly capturing Lena's full attention. For the next hour, Feels, he dismantled the prestige of elite institutions, championing raw talent over institutional pedigree. He didn't speak in abstractions, he spoke of human lives. A mother coding at a kitchen table, a former inmate reinventing himself, Feels, and a rural youth saving his community. These weren't statistics, they were stories of resurrection, fueled by his unrelenting vision and tireless work. Feels. "Talent is universal," Adrian proclaimed, "but opportunity is the gatekeeper." His mission was to dismantle those gates. The crowd erupted in genuine fervor. Lena found herself swept up in his infectious conviction. Later at the gathering, Feels, she followed Grace through a sea of influence. When Grace embraced him and called him brother, the realization hit Lena with a start. When their eyes finally met, he offered a warm, perceptive smile. "And you," he remarked, "Feels, must be the legendary Lena Morrison." He spoke as if they were already acquaintances. Feels. "Grace is your biggest advocate," he said warmly. "I am not legendary," Lena countered. "I have just stopped hiding." As they shook hands, she felt a profound sense of mutual respect. "Visibility suits you," Feels, he noted, a sincere observation that resonated far more than any rehearsed charm. They quickly transitioned to the work of the Morrison Foundation. Empowering grassroots leaders was a goal they both shared. "My students have the fire," Feels, "but they lack the fuel," he explained. For half an hour, the room faded away. He was a collaborator who spoke the language of impact, a man looking to build a legacy alongside her. Feels. Lena proposed a formal meeting to discuss a strategic alliance, her capital paired with his innovation. It was a classic move executed with her signature professionalism. They scheduled a follow-up for the coming week. It was strictly business, Feels, or so she told herself. But Grace was waiting in the wings with a knowing glint in her eyes. "Well," she prodded. Lena maintained her composure, admitting only that his work was impressive. Grace's smirk widened. "Just a professional partnership?" Feels, she teased, her voice laden with playful implication and unspoken possibilities. Feels. "What else could there be?" Lena questioned. Grace began highlighting Adrian's character and his understated charm. Lena quickly shut down the suggestion of romance. Grace urged her to stop acting like a machine and see the man before her. Feels. But Lena was still processing the trauma of her divorce. To her, trust was a relic of a past life. Her years with Richard had framed love as an elaborate deception. She wondered if she would ever be vulnerable again. Her heart had become a bastion, Feels, its gates locked tight against the possibility of further betrayal. Feels. When they met the next week, Adrian arrived with substance, not just sentiment. He presented hard data and a roadmap that mirrored her own ambition. Feels. He laid out the blueprint, a synergy where her foundation provided the resources and his team provided the expertise. It was a seamless pipeline from education to leadership. Lena reviewed the plans. They were impeccable and thorough. Feels. This was the clarity she had been seeking during her darkest hours. "This is remarkable," she breathed. He met her gaze directly. "I have been waiting for the right partner to help bring this vision to life." Feels. They spent hours aligning their visions. Adrian was a flexible collaborator, willing to adapt to her strategic insights. By the conclusion of their meeting, a pilot program was scheduled to launch within 90 days. "To new beginnings," he toasted. Feels. Lena echoed the sentiment. Over the following weeks, their partnership solidified through shared goals and constant communication. He never viewed her as a mere source of funding, but as a peer in every sense. In the pauses between their work, Feels, the atmosphere changed. A profound respect emerged, one that felt significant, authentic, and perhaps even a bit daunting. Feels. Lena found herself anticipating their daily exchanges. Adrian was remarkably attentive to her vision and her father's enduring legacy. He respected the boundaries of her past, never prying into the remains of her marriage. One afternoon, Feels. Amidst the construction of their first community center, she voiced her observation. "You are unique," she told him. "Most people are blinded by the wealth or the tabloid drama." He looked at her with unwavering clarity. Feels. "I see someone dedicated to making an impact," he replied. For Lena, it was a moment of profound, liberating recognition. Feels. Half a year passes and the haunting presence of the past finally recedes. Richard yields once he sees her autonomy is unshakable. The legal split is clinical and absolute. Lena retains her legacy at Morrison Holdings. Her counsel, Harold Feels, delivers the final verdict. It is finished. You are autonomous. Staring at the city lights, Lena waits for a visceral reaction. Nothing changed, she admits. Harold understands the void. The union perished years ago, he notes. Alone in the quiet, Feels she expected a sudden lightness, but finds only a hollow, echoing stillness. Feels. No weeping, no fanfare, simply the closing of a poisonous volume. Grace enters to gauge her spirit, but Lena well, she maintains. Despite an offer to celebrate, Lena retreats to the boardroom. She chooses labor as her sanctuary. Feels. To construct a life she finally controls. This was her private ritual of mending. Morrison Holdings ascended to unprecedented altitudes, marking its most prosperous era. The structural integrity was flawless, and at last Lena wielded the ink. Feels. She was drafting a narrative where she stood as the protagonist, rather than the casualty of another's design. Feels. Her philanthropic venture flourishes. New visionaries emerge, and the collaboration with Adrian proves seamless. Lena experiences a profound, authentic contentment, not the synthetic mask she once donned for Richard, but a grounded, Feels, internal resonance. A fortnight after the legal decree, Adrian finds her in a quiet corridor. "I must speak plainly," he remarks, his tone a resonant bass. A sudden tension coils within her. "Continue," she replies softly. "I find you remarkable," Feels. He starts. "In your professional command and your personal character. I hold immense respect for your essence. You represent a true equal in every possible dimension." Feels. "I wish to see the woman beyond the executive," he confesses. The sentiment is unvarnished and sincere. No manipulation, no obscured motives. "I lack the readiness," Lena counters, her composure flickering. "The trauma of the split remains raw." Feels. "I am still reconstructing my own identity." Adrian remains unperturbed. "I comprehend your position," he assures. "I seek no forced progression. I merely wanted my intentions clear so you might choose your own timing. No urgency, no demands." Feels. She expresses gratitude for his restraint. He remains honorable to his vow. Their labor continues, his reverence constant, his proximity a grounding force. Feels. He transforms into a steadying presence in her periphery, a man who treasures her intrinsic worth rather than her public stature. Gradually, Lena glimpses a genuine horizon, not a hollow substitute for Richard, but a distinct rebirth. Feels. She permits a fracture in her defenses, a small opening for hope, but that was a concern for a future hour. Currently, her focus remained on her corporate dominion and her enduring impact. The existence she finally commanded. She was Lena Morrison, Feels. Benefactor, executive, potent and autonomous, and for the first time in a decade, she viewed the coming dawn with genuine anticipation. Feels. 1 year after the collapse of her former reality, Lena occupies the same hall. The Morrison Tower shimmers in the distance, yet tonight she avoids the shadows. She dons an emerald gown, the very hue of triumph. No longer a specter in crimson, Feels. She stands as a sovereign in her own domain. Her hair cascades in elegant ripples, and her paternal jewels fracture the warm light. Grace stands close, monitoring the minutes. 15 left, she murmurs. Lena regards her companion with deep affection. Feels. Thank you for your loyalty, she says. Grace merely grins, aware of the heavy toll paid for this moment. Feels. Is sentimentality taking over? Grace jokes, her gaze bright. I refuse to weep and damage my appearance, Lena chuckles. I am simply filled with appreciation. You were my stability during the upheaval. Grace offers a reassuring touch. Feels. That is the definition of family. You, myself, and Adrian. The mere mention of him brings a smile. 3 months prior, they finally shared a quiet meal. No pretense, just 4 hours of unshielded honesty. Feels. They discussed youthful aspirations and mature anxieties. As the night closed, he requested another meeting. She answered without hesitation. It was the simplest choice she had ever made. Feels. Their affection matures at a natural pace, devoid of coercion, simply two spirits aligning their trajectories. He watches from the audience, a genuine collaborator in her professional and personal spheres. Feels. Their flagship initiative has achieved nationwide acclaim, guiding hundreds toward true liberation. The hall overflowed with influential figures and visionaries. Journalists crave her perspective. Yet, as she surveys the assembly, feels. One detail stands out. The Bennett lineage is absent. Their malignant influence has finally evaporated, leaving Lena to bask in the radiant clarity of her own making. Feels. Patricia exploited every contact for an invitation, but Lena remained resolute, denied. This was her domain now, her enterprise, her existence, her earned conquest. The Bennetts are merely a dark fable, she has finally concluded. Feels. Jeffrey Santos approaches the podium, his voice silencing the room. Good evening. Welcome to the second annual Morrison Holdings Gala. As the illumination softens, Lena inhales deeply, finding her center. A year ago, feels. She struggled from the periphery just to be acknowledged. Tonight, she occupies the center stage. Jeffrey beams at the guests. Last year offered spectacle. Tonight, we offer fewer scandals, but significantly more substance. Feels. Gentle amusement spreads across the hall. The memory of the great scandal, the separation that gripped the city, remains vivid. Yet for Lena, those events belong to a stranger from a forgotten era. This evening ignores clandestine affairs. Feels. Jeffrey proceeds. It focuses on tangible outcomes. Under CEO Lena Morrison, we have surpassed financial milestones and fundamentally reimagined what success entails. Behind him, the displays radiate promise. Families entering bright, feels. Accessible residences, urban gardens flourishing amidst the stone, solar arrays harvesting the sun. This is no mere collection of assets. It is a blueprint for vibrant societies, founded on the hope of progress. Feels. Look beyond the architecture. This is raw potential. The visuals reveal founders who rose from unemployment to ownership, parents securing their future, former inmates reclaiming their dignity, youthful pioneers emerging from the margins of society. Feels. Jeffrey summarized it perfectly. We did not merely provide capital, we provided conviction. Well, this feels the sting of tears. This was her father's vision, realized on a scale he never dared dream. Feels. It is absolute evidence that commerce can possess a conscience, because true achievement is measured in aspirations realized, not bank balances. Please join me in welcoming our Chief Executive Officer, Lena Morrison. Feels. Lena ascends the platform to a thunderous standing ovation. The entire assembly rises. They do not merely applaud a survivor of public shame. They celebrate a leader who enacted real change. She steadies herself at the lectern, feels, searching for familiar support. She finds Adrian, whose expression keeps her anchored amidst the chaos. Grace offers a subtle gesture of triumph from the wings. Nearby, Walter Chin radiates parental pride. Thank you, Lena speaks, her tone unwavering. Feels. Last year I arrived to declare my identity, but this evening I am here to demonstrate the future we are collectively forging. Feels. She outlines a roadmap where 20 urban centers achieve lasting growth and 10,000 souls find their purpose. My father maintained that wealth was empty if it failed to unlock opportunities, she explains. To him, feels, victory was defined by distribution, not accumulation. An image of a youthful Thomas Morrison appears. Lena's composure wavers as she regards the founder of her world. I mourn him daily, she murmurs, yet his presence is palpable. Feels. Within every structure we erect and every individual we support. His true inheritance is not a corporation. It is the audacity to elevate others as you ascend. Feels. A profound silence envelops the hall as she continues. This past year revealed that concealment offers no safety. It merely diminishes the soul, she notes. Reality, however jagged, is superior to a soothing deception. Feels. Genuine character is the only viable foundation. She takes a deliberate breath. I spent 5 years performing a role, attempting to inhabit an existence that suffocated my potential. When my private life shattered before the world, I feared the end. Feels. Yet amidst the wreckage, I discovered a greater treasure. I discovered my own liberation. Feels. The audience resonates with her words. They witnessed her descent and subsequent rise. This is not a plea for pity, she asserts. It is an explanation of cause. Our prosperity this year was no coincidence. It was the fruit of our integrity. Feels. We constructed a dominion on authentic principles rather than curated facades. The displays broadcast the evidence, new employment, ecological innovations, and reclaimed futures. These are human narratives, not dry statistics. Feels. I need not request that you witness the true Lena tonight, she adds with a smile. Because you are already watching. Now, observe the future we are constructing together. Feels a kingdom of possibility. An inheritance that transcends our lifetimes. Lena elevates her glass, a gesture mirrored by hundreds. My father for the education and leadership. To my staff for manifesting this ambition. To our associates, Feels, who trust in the potential of renewal. And to every individual present who uses their influence to ignite genuine progress. Thank you. The resulting ovation is a visceral wave, immense and welcoming. Feels. Guests dry their eyes while others simply beam with joy. As Lena departs the stage, she experiences a buoyancy in her heart that has been absent for a generation. Feels. Adrian awaits her at the base of the stairs. Words are superfluous. He merely offers a grounding touch before retreating. That was her requirement. The companionship of a man who respects her autonomy. Feels. The remaining hours dissolve into a whirlwind of strategy and connection. Executives seek alliances, and the press inquires about the horizon. Lena navigates the gathering with absolute poise. Suddenly, Feels, she pauses near the very table where Richard severed their bond a year ago. A fleeting shadow of the past, standing in a room overflowing with vitality. Feels. She lingers for a moment, recalling the sting of being cast aside while her husband's mistress claimed her place. Back then, she was a ghost in her own life. Look at you now, Walter Chin remarks, materializing at her side. What a transformation, Feels. I was always here, Walter, she replies quietly. I just stopped playing small. Your father would be beaming, he murmurs. It is more than the business, it is the soul you have poured into it. You are leading with integrity, Lena, Feels. That is the true architecture of a life well lived. You have become the teacher now, Feels. The gala stretches deep into the night. As the final guests depart and the cleanup begins, Lena stands amidst the silence of the grand hall. Grace and Adrian approach, their steps echoing against the marble. You did it, Grace says softly. Feels. You turned all that wreckage into something breathtaking. We did it, Lena clarifies. This victory belongs to everyone who chose creation over ruin. Still, Adrian notes, it took immense courage to stand here a year ago and reclaim your identity. Feels. It took true grit to face the truth when fleeing would have been the easy path. Feels. Lena revisits that memory, standing in the shadows in her red dress, watching Richard discard her like an old habit. She recalls the cycle broke. Taking that stitch felt like fate then, but now the perspective has shifted, Feels. That night was never truly about her ex-husband or the spectacle. It was not even about Morrison Holdings. It was about Lena Morrison finally prioritizing her own soul after decades of self-sacrifice. I think I am ready to go home, she tells them, Feels. They head to the garage together, wrapped in a comfortable, hard-won peace. Feels. Adrian has his own ride, yet he escorts them to the car regardless. Thank you for showing up, Lena tells him. Where else would I be, he asks with a smile. This mission matters. You matter to me. It is a quiet admission, but it carries the weight of a world, Feels. After years of existing as a ghost, she is finally seen. I have ideas for the new initiatives. It is a date, he replies. Or a meeting. Or both, she laughs. Both sounds perfect. She watches him depart, then turns to Grace. Feels. I am happy, Grace answers. You are literally radiant. Feels. Is this how it is meant to feel? She wonders. Just genuine happiness? Precisely like that, Grace confirms. The drive home is peacefully quiet. On the sidewalk, Lena gazes up at her house, a sanctuary where she can finally breathe. Inside, Feels. She trades her couture for lounge clothes and brews some tea. Standing by the window, she watches the urban landscape glitter. Somewhere in that sprawl, Richard is navigating his new reality. Dating, working, Feels. Struggling to define himself without her anchor. She sincerely wishes him well, then turns her gaze toward her own limitless horizon. Feels. Lena hopes he is out there, gathering the fragments and learning from the wreckage of their past. As for Patricia, she is likely still attempting to bleach the Bennett name after the public fallout. Feels. Let her hunt those phantoms. It is irrelevant to Lena now. Candace simply evaporated, a shadow lost in the sun. Lena considers her for a heartbeat before the memory fades. That was a fable from a previous life. Today, Feels. Morrison Holdings possesses a revitalized spirit. The foundation is mending lives, sustainable ventures are flourishing, and her connection with Adrian is authentic. But the greatest victory? She finally found her own center. Feels. Lena Morrison stands tall, authentic, vulnerable, and liberated. She constructed an empire, but its foundation is not just steel and glass. It is a kingdom forged from spirit. In this realm, success is not a digit on a ledger. Feels. It is the pulse of lives transformed. Power is no longer a tool for suppression. It is a hand extended to lift others. This is the legacy her father sacrificed for, a vision she nurtured until it brushed the stars. She raises her mug to the skyline, feels, a quiet tribute to the man who began this journey and the future she is crafting. We did it, Dad. We actually did it. Below, the city lights shimmer like a million voices finally finding their breath, feels. Amidst that ocean of light, Lena Morrison has discovered her true north. She is finished lurking in the corners of someone else's ballroom. No more diminishing her essence to accommodate the fragile egos of small-minded men, feels. No more squeezing into a mold she never fit. She stands here now at the axis of her own universe, leading, loving, and in time present. This is her authentic legacy, anchored in truth and powered by intent, feels. It is a life overflowing with a joy that finally feels earned. It is more than enough. In this quiet moment beneath the midnight sky, it is quite literally everything.